This week on Enterprise Security Weekly, I have taken over completely from Paul. I shave and discover that I have a second chin. We will also talk about GDPR compliance, and we'll talk about building up a purple team in your organization and how your enterprise purchases should fit into that purple team. All on Enterprise Security Weekly. Episode, whatever episode this is 92.
Is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
I'm a tiger. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly. I don't know how this is going to go because Paul's not here this week, but we're just going to give it a shot.
Even if you've got experience in security, you can benefit from going to somewhere and learning about that bug again. Wearing my tactical turtleneck just for Mr. John Strand, who is on the lines via Skype. John, welcome to the program.
I'm wearing the tactical fleece as well, Paul. This is
Excellent.
A fully, completely, and utterly tactical show.
Improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your security operations with DF Labs security orchestration, automation, and response technology. Automate threat containment, orchestrate incident response, and measure operational performance with DF Labs in-command SOAR platform. Leverage your current security resources to minimize incident resolution time, maximize analyst efficiency, increase the number of incidents handled, and reduce overall risk. In-command SOAR acts as a force multiplier, enabling your security team to do more with less. Streamline the full incident response lifecycle automation process today. Keep your cybersecurity incidents under control with DF Labs. Visit dflabs.com/Security Weekly and request to see in-command SOAR live in action. Stop attackers from domain credential theft and lateral movement with a 99% success rate by using artificial intelligence to control the attacker's perception of the environment. Javelin Networks is the world's first endpoint intrusion containment platform to protect domain networks. Javelin detects targeted attacks and breaches by obfuscating Active Directory, domain controllers, domain identities, domain credentials, and all domain resources. It only takes one compromised machine to jeopardize the entire organization. Don't be a victim. Visit javelin-networks.com and request a demo of AD Protect today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly, episode number 92. As I said, I'm doing this one solo, so this is the part where I find out, like, usually before the show, just you wonder, like, Paul, like, how hard is it to actually do Security Weekly and Enterprise Security Weekly? And you're like, yeah, that can't be that hard. And this is usually the part where I fumble over my words, stumble, and realize just how good Paul is at what he does. A couple of announcements before we get started. We can go to IT Pro TV, or itpro.tv, Security Weekly, and use the code SecurityWeekly30 to try it free for 7 days and receive a 30% off your monthly subscription for the lifetime of your active subscription. We also want you to check out on-demand materials. Some of our previously recorded webcasts are now available on-demand. All you need to do to pull down those webcasts is go to securityweekly.com/on-demand. Also, ticket sales are now open for Social Engineering Rhode Island Conference, Saturday, June 6th at Salve Regina University in Newport, Rhode Island. Go to http://ser-ri.org to register. And we're also giving away 2 free tickets for this conference, so please send your best meme to Paul and Larry to psw@securityweekly.com. And I'm absolutely terrified. I don't know if we have the people back in the booth, the engineering booth, they have to go through that. And I'm absolutely horrified what they're going to have to go through, because I'm pretty sure that most of those memes will be 30% deficient in pants. Also, how do you feel about user and entity behavior analytics? What about your SIM? How does it play into that? Check out our Logarithm webcast. That'll be June 14th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So today we're going to start things out. We're going to do things a little bit different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And when I do so, I am going to give a presentation. Of course, it's a PowerPoint presentation, because without PowerPoint, I die. a little bit inside every single time. This is an IANS presentation that I've given a number of times over the past couple of weeks. I've been traveling quite a bit. I've been to Toronto, Vancouver, Minneapolis, St. Paul twice, Denver, Salt Lake City, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Costa Rica, and Bozeman, Montana, and also Trail City, South Dakota, branding. And I haven't given this presentation at every single one of those events, but quite a few of them. And I thought it really plays into the idea of what we're covering here in Enterprise Security Weekly. One of the main goals of Enterprise Security Weekly is to give organizations actionable activities that they can do to evaluate their security products. And I think that this presentation fits into that very, very, very nicely, because there's a lot of different products that are available on the marketplace today, and they do, or at least they say that they do, lots of cool things, but are they actually effective at actually stopping real attackers? And I think that a purple team exercise can also be part of that overall architecture approach to evaluate the different products that you have in your organization. So let's get started. So problem statement: what are we going to test whenever we actually set out to do a purple team? What do we want to prioritize in our purple team? How do we actually staff this? Do we bring in a bunch of hackers, non-hackers, external consultants? What is it the real attackers do? And I'm not going to go on my threat intelligence rant today, because I'm so tired of giving that rant, and we'll just move on past that. So this ultimately is going to tie back to the MITRE Techniques Matrix. I gave a webcast a couple of weeks ago talking about this Techniques Matrix and how for the first time in information security, we actually have a nice framework where we can evaluate our various security controls. And this actually applies to the different vendors that you can look at in your organization as to whether or not they're going to help you in effectively stopping adversaries, not just gaining access to your network, but also moving laterally throughout your network as well. And the way that this is set up, and they've reshuffled it a little bit, is they have initial exploitation on the far left, and then it moves into persistence and lateral movement and so on as you progress all the way through. Each one of these different squares that you have in this little checkerboard that's here has a series of different scripts and different things you can do to test to see your organization's preparedness for actually detecting or stopping the different component, whether you're talking about defensive evasion or privilege escalation or persistence or credentialed access lateral movement. So whenever you're looking at a vendor and they say that they actually stop a specific type of attack, you can actually come up with a series of scripts, and I'm going to share with you some automated tools and some wonderful scripts and utilities that are available online that can greatly ease your process in evaluating your security products. Because everything that you're talking about with the technique matrix basically ties directly back to a technical control that exists in your organization, or maybe doesn't exist in your organization. And before spending ridiculous amounts of money trying to purchase a new product, you can come in and you can test these different components. And this is part of that purple team. You would have the red team offensive components where you test out these different techniques that exist in the techniques matrix. And then you can see how your security technology and your team actually responds. So if we look at, let's just go through a couple of vendors that I do like, right? So if we look at something like Javelin, who is a sponsor of our show. Of course, we're plugging our sponsors because Javelin is awesome. One of the things that they have is the ability to create fake accounts in your organization. That would be for like lateral movement. So if I do a password spray, or I'm trying to do token impersonation, anything that we're talking about access for token manipulation, that would be something that could possibly be picked up by something like Javelin. We also did some webcasts, by the way, on creating Honey admin accounts and doing that manually. So if you're like, oh, he's talking about a vendor. Rawr. Well, we've also talked about how you can do that for free on your own in a previous webcast too. The other thing, getting away from vendors completely, looking at lateral movement, right? So lateral movement in your organization by deploying software, comm model, communication between different systems, logon scripts, just basically mounting SMB shares and so on. You can do things like simply enabling the firewall that's on your endpoint to shut down that lateral movement. And that could be a vendor firewall. Absolutely. It could be McAfee, Symantec, Sophos, whatever firewall vendor or whatever AV vendor you have most likely has a firewall component bundled with it. You simply turn that on, and that'll stop a lot of the lateral movement. So there's a bunch of things that you can do looking at your technologies that you're putting in place that can directly overlay with this framework, and you can find out what it is you're protecting in your organization. And what you'll discover is what many organizations do is they start purchasing products, and they end up purchasing using multiple products to do the exact same type of defense over and over and over again on the same type of protection. Let's say initial access to a system or exploitation. It's very, very common for us to see companies that have antivirus and EDR solution, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on today, maybe an application whitelisting solution. And that may be a great approach, that kind of overlaid defense in depth strategy. However, if you're going to spend $150,000, $200,000, $500,000 on a product that you already have some coverage, would it possibly be better to maybe buy another product to fill a gap that you have in this matrix, to develop a better defense and depth approach? Well, that's where your purple team comes into play. So we have some tools that automate large portions of this. First up is Caldera by MITRE. Caldera is kind of a hot mess of a beta product at the moment, but man, does it have amazing potential. And it does work, by the way. It's kind of buggy and it tends to crash. And I need to stop saying that because I scare people away. You should absolutely run Caldera. You're going to get frustrated, and many times the best way to deal with Caldera is just uninstall and reinstall it. But it is fantastic when you get it up and running. You can choose the different components of testing back at this techniques matrix that you want to test. You can even test all of them. You then install an agent on a large number of systems, not large number, like 5 or 6 systems, and then you let Caldera do its campaign, and it'll test all of these different types of techniques, and it'll give you a nice report of which of these techniques were actually effective, which ones worked. Now you can take these different techniques and you can go back to your security product, whatever endpoint security firewall product or Javelin style product or whatever it is you're using in your organization, your SIM, whatever the product is, and you can see, did you actually have alerts that were generated? Did it actually stop these different attack components? And now you come up with an absolutely fantastic gap analysis, and then you can go back and you can look at the vendors and the different products that you're looking to implement in your organization, and you'll be able to more accurately distribute your funds in the security team. Instead of constantly trying to protect the endpoint again and again and again and again and again, maybe you need to invest in a better SIM. Maybe you need to invest in some cyber deception and so on. Now, the tool is Unfetter, although the Unfetter Git repository has been acting a little bit flaky over the past couple of weeks. It has a really tremendous amount of overlap with Caldera, but it does a lot of the same types of things. It'll go through and test the different components of the MITRE attack techniques matrix, and then it'll give you a nice report on what worked and what did not work on the different components of the technique matrix. And I also like this. It's kind of hard to see, but if you're looking at this assessment, it goes through like the kill chain phase, and it goes through like collection, credentialed access, defense evasion, discovery, and it'll give you your overall compliance and your ability to detect or stop those different components by the category. If we go back here, it'll show up here in just a second, by each category from the total technique matrix going from the left all the way over to the right. So that is Unfetter. So check that out. There's also a lot of other Git repositories available that have a large number of different scripts available to them that you can also test. You have the Atomic Red team from Canary, or Red Canary, and then you have Meta from Uber, ran by Chris Gates, and then you have the Awesome Threat Detection series of scripts that you can pull down from X, 4D31, which I don't know what that actually converts to in hex. But what this is great for is it gives you additional scripts and additional components that you can use in your organization to test your tool's ability to actually detect these types of attacks. But I'm going to warn you, I was talking with Dave Kennedy about the MITRE attack matrix a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that he's seeing, and to be honest, we've been seeing it as well, is a lot of vendors are being very, very specific as far as what they detect. When you're looking at these different scripts that are available in Red Canary, or you're looking at what Meta provides, or Awesome Threat Detection, those are examples. Unfortunately, there's a large number of security products out there and vendors that aren't detecting that style of attack, but rather detecting the very specific type of command that would be in the Atomic Red team by Red Canary. And that is a problem. It's not actually detecting that category. Let's just use like PowerShell. So you'll have a tool that'll be able to detect a very, very specific PowerShell script. and that's all that they detect, rather than abstracting that up a level and saying we're going to analyze all PowerShell for these different types of techniques. They're just detecting one specific type of a PowerShell attack, and that is not really the best way that the MITRE attack matrix was meant to be utilized. And that does create some concern for me as a security professional. The products are getting better at detecting the different techniques that are listed here on the slide. But the problem is they're actually detecting these very specific techniques. And all an attacker needs to do is just change them ever so slightly. So just give you an example. You can run a command from the command prompt. You can do cmd.exe space /c for channelized or /k for detached. If a script is written with /c, all an attacker needs to do in some situations is switch it over to /k. And it'll bypass. And this is actually research that Mike Poor and Ed Scotus came up with like years ago whenever they were analyzing firewalls. So instead of this detecting categories, it's getting very specific in the blacklist that they're detecting. So watch out for that. Maybe modify these scripts slightly. And that's something your red team can absolutely do. They'll bring that to the purple team scenario. They'll have the ability to modify these scripts in just a few small little tweaks to see if the tools that you have in your environment are effective at detecting that category or that specific technique. And that brings us to getting caught. Getting caught is absolutely essential. And this is kind of the evolution of a penetration test from simply seeing if an organization can be successfully compromised and attacked, and instead switching it over to truly identify what are the different types of techniques that are effective. And this is kind of building on that MITRE attack techniques matrix. So for command and control, rather than just having a handful of different techniques, we can go through a lot of different techniques. And this is actually a spreadsheet that is available if you go to tinyurl.com /504extra2. Once again, that's tinyurl.com /504extra2. It'll bring you to a Dropbox folder that I have with all kinds of crap in it. And in there is a spreadsheet called C2 Work. And you can kind of work through this particular spreadsheet and try a variety of different techniques. And in here, we have a bunch of command and control techniques. So we have VS Agent over port 443. VS Agent is also at that URL. DNSCat2 by Ron Bose, Metasploit HTTPS, Meterpreter Shell, Raw, TCP, and so on. You can give this to your red team and have the red team run each one of these. Then you can go to the blue team and you can say, okay, blue team, did we actually detect this? Did we block it? Did we block it but not get an alert? Did we detect it but not get a block? So you'll be able to get some really good visibility as far as what is effective in your organization for detecting various attacks and what is not. Once again, this can be found at tinyurl.com /504extra2. So go ahead and check that out. And at the end, you're going to get a gap analysis. Now, not everything in the MITRE attack framework is actually tested or testable or has scripts. Some of the things that you're going to have to look at is basically finding ways to do your own testing. So like, for example, data exfiltration and let's say data is encrypted. You can actually do something like use WinRAR and try to send it through your data loss prevention product and see if it can find data that is RAR'd leaving the environment. So the point is, this is kind of at the early stages. There's a lot of new like scripts and capabilities and automated tools, but it doesn't have 100% coverage yet, but it is slowly getting there. But what you develop is a gap analysis. So here you can see that we have a bunch of red areas, right? So red, credential dumping, file and directory discovery. That would be tools like PowerShell Empire, ShareFinder and FileFinder, account discovery, permission group discovery, process discovery. Those would be gaps. PowerShell in this example would be a gap. So now when you're looking at your security products, you can get the purple team in a room and say, we're going to purchase a product. And for this, creating a new service, permissions groups, process discovery, it could be something like a SIM, where you basically put in better rules in your SIM, maybe using the JP-Cert blogs on event IDs of interest. If you're looking for that, just Google JP-Cert event ID. They have a whole bunch of tools that they ran. And they basically created I'll just bring it up. Here, hold on. Let me go to my my browser. Let's go to JP-Cert. And it is the tools analysis result sheet here. And they went through and they listed out all the different tools. And if we go to each one of the tools, it'll say what ports are used by the tool. And then it'll also tell you what type of event ID was created in the SIM whenever this particular tool was utilized. So if you're looking at trying to fill the gaps, sometimes it's going to be a tool. Other times it may just be simply updating your SIM and the event IDs that it's actually triggering and alerting on. Or a correlation of a number of different event IDs. So a lot of these tools will generate event IDs that are pretty much benign, but if you always have the same 6 event IDs that are generated for PowerShell or for PSExec or Mimikatz, then you might want to create a rule. If you have an IP address that generates these 5 event IDs, kick that up as a really high alert. Now you can start plugging these holes. And that is a really, really good approach, and it's fundamentally different from the way a lot of organizations handle security, because by and large, they go and they keep buying the newest, awesomest tool out there, but they end up kind of like, it's like a well-worn groove in a record player that skips. They're doing the same thing. They're doing EDR, they're checking on the endpoint, an endpoint, an endpoint. They're doing Tanium on the endpoint, Carbon Black on the endpoint. They're running Windows Defender on the endpoint. And somebody decides, well, we're going to now run Cylance on the endpoint. And they're constantly hitting the exact same thing again and again, when it may be more intelligent for your organization to diversify their technology portfolio. So the key takeaways, and we're talking about a purple team, is we're moving away from an idea of can we be hacked to what can we actually detect. And we finally have a framework where we can do this with the MITRE framework, and that's awesome. We also have tools that are available to actually automate this, and this allows your organization in the enterprise to start identifying those gaps and then looking for technical solutions, be it open source, be it tweaking of existing tool sets, or maybe even buying entirely new tools from scratch to fill those different gaps. So kind of a key takeaway is don't keep trying to do the same protections on the same thing again and again. Branch out and start filling the gaps in your MITRE ATT&CK framework methodology. So that concludes this wonderful little tech segment that we have for Enterprise Security Weekly. And as I said, this is an IANS presentation. IANS is pretty cool. Check it out.